Hi, welcome to episode 3 of my Tone Poet reviews on Crate Digging with Carter. This is for March of 2026, and I'm excited to talk about this month's releases. We've got 2 releases, as always, this month from the Blue Note Tone Poet series, including Tenorman by the Lawrence Marable Quartet and Compulsion by Andrew Hill. So let's go ahead and jump right into my thoughts on this month's 2 records. So I'm going to use my rating system that I've used in my previous videos, which includes a 4-point system for every record for presentation, music quality, approachability, value, and then a 5th point for my overall score out of 10. So let's jump into Tenorman by the Lawrence Marable Quartet. Now, this is a really interesting record and a unique release for the Tone Poet series. This was initially issued not by Blue Note, but by a small jazz label on the West Coast called, fittingly, Jazz West. I want to say this label only had a handful of releases, maybe like 12 or so, before it became defunct. So really small, really unique label. And the lineup on here is interesting. So looking at this record, and if you don't know who Lawrence Marable is, like I didn't know who this artist was either, I would have assumed that Lawrence Marable is the tenor man, is this guy right here on sax. That's not the case. Lawrence Marable is the session leader, but he's the drummer here, pictured very blurry in the background. And this record's featuring James Clay. That is, in fact, our tenor man, featuring prominently up front. Other musicians on this track include Jimmy Bond. That is the bass player who worked with Chet Baker, West Coast session musician. And then we have Sonny Clark, who later becomes a prominent player in the Blue Note recording line and has several influential and really good Blue Note piano-led records. And then our picture here showcases our other 2. Right here, we've got James Clay. And then over here, we've got Lawrence Marable. So that's our quartet for this session here. This album was initially released in 1956, and it was also recorded in 1956. So let's go ahead and dive into my review. So first, let's start with our presentation. So pretty straightforward jazz album cover presentation. You've got your prominent, what you want to emphasize here, tenor man. You've got James Clay playing the tenor. And although this session is led by Lawrence Marable, a drummer, he really allows James Clay to shine and have a prominent place. And this really feels like there's a lot of influence from the tenor saxophone in this record. So very aptly named and appropriately pictured cover here. On the back side, you've got, as I mentioned, a few session photos, along with some brief liner notes that tell the story and background of Lawrence Marable getting connected with and meeting James Clay and being very impressed with the young saxophonist. James Clay is only 20 years old when he performs on this record. Other than that, this is not a gatefold or anything like that. There's no further session photos inside like other Tone Poet releases, but it does include some liner notes, which I found really interesting and really insightful. And I really appreciate the inclusion of this because it adds a lot of detail and a lot of depth to the history behind this record, the session, the players meeting up, and it gives some unique deep dives into some facts about each of the songs. So I really enjoyed reading through this, and this is a great bonus that I'm glad this record included to add additional context and history to this session. So for presentation, I'm giving it a couple bonus points here because it has the additional liner notes that were written by Sid Schwartz. I'm going to give this one a 5. Nothing impressive. It's not an iconic Reed Miles cover or anything like that, but it gets the job done, and I do appreciate the additional liner notes. So let's go on and talk about the music quality. What can you expect from this record? Now, this record was recorded in the West Coast, but despite that, it's not a West Coast jazz. I mean, I guess it is inherently a West Coast jazz record, but it's not a cool jazz or West Coast in that sense. This is very much in the vein of hard bop, which I think is really cool. So it's very fitting with the Blue Note catalog and the usual type of music that Blue Note was putting out in the mid 50s to mid 60s. So hard bop session on the West Coast. You got some key players on there who later shine on Blue Note, like Sonny Clark. He actually composes a lot of the records on there. And then James Clay goes on to become session player for Ray Charles, and is kind of prominent in the soul jazz genre, I would say, R&B saxophone player. He describes himself as a Wikipedia quote in which he's the archetypical Texas tenor: big sound, low frills, high emotion, which I really like that sound. I'm a big fan of the Texas tenor, straight ahead. Got that earthy, bluesy feel to it. So I really enjoyed his playing on this session, and we'll have to check out some of his other albums and the other work that he is a session player in. So that is what you can expect. Lawrence Marable, not a prominent guy. Obviously, we haven't heard of him. Kind of takes a back seat. He leads the session from behind, does a great job kind of coordinating everything, making sure that all of his bandmates have a time to shine. So I think he's a very well-led, clean session there. And then Jimmy Bond does a stand-up job on bass as well. You can hear all of these artists on here have moments to shine throughout this record, and very much just a classic, straight ahead, hard bop record. It's got a mix of up-tempo tracks along with some ballads. Some of my favorite tracks on this record include the opener, The Devil in the Deep Blue Sea, a mid-tempo hard bop track. I also enjoyed Minor Meeting by Sonny Clark. That's a good one as well. And it's also, I think, a lot of artists covered again in the future in other Blue Note recordings. On the B side, Willow Weep for Me, that's one of my all-time favorite jazz standards, so I enjoy listening to that one. It was a little bit more upbeat than I've heard other variations of this song be, so I enjoyed that. I thought that was a unique take on that song. And my favorite ballad on the track was Lover Man. So overall, lots of cool tracks on here. Some originals. I think we've got 3 originals by Sonny Clark on here. So yeah, very cool. Total of 8 tracks across, and a good mix of, like I said, mid-tempo, up-tempo, and ballads. Nothing out of this world, nothing earth-shattering influential, but just a solid session. So musically, for music quality, I'm going to give this record a 7 out of 10. Sounds great. All the musicians are performing very well, but nothing out of this world, just a classic hard bop record. Now, let's dive into the approachability. As a hard bop record that's led clean with a nice variation of music, this is a record that anybody could enjoy. I put this on at dinner before, had friends over and played this record this month, and everyone enjoyed it. It floats well, in the background, or if you do some deep listening, it'll still satisfy you there too. So for approachability, I'm giving this one a 9 out of 10. It's good for many, many settings. Maybe there's a one-off occasion in which it might be a little bit too upbeat, so hence not a 10, but overall a very approachable record that many people can enjoy. I'll definitely be listening to this record time and time again. And let's dive into our value. So this is when this record really stands out. There's been a lot of hype about this release online because since 1956, this record has never been released in the US until now. Because it was released on part of a small jazz label on the West Coast, finding an original pressing is extremely challenging. And pressings of the original one, if you can find them on Discogs, range from, with an average price of $600, can go as high as $1,200. And that's if you can find a pressing in good condition. Maybe someone throws one up on Discogs, maybe someone puts one on eBay, but as of right now, I couldn't find any originals on sale. There were a few reissues in Spain, not from the original master tapes, kind of lower quality in the 80s and mid 2000s. And there were a couple of Japanese pressings made from the original master tapes, I want to say in the 90s, maybe early 2000s. Those records even themselves go for upwards of $150. So getting this record affordably was pretty much impossible until now, especially a high quality master from the original tapes reissue like this. So I'm giving this one a 10 out of 10 on value. If you like this record, you want to check it out, and you want to get a high quality pressing of this record, unless you want to pay out the nose and hope that one appears somewhere, this is pretty much your only way to do so. So check this record out. Really enjoyed this release, and like I said, I'll be playing this one from time to time. It's a great record. So where does that leave our total score for Tenorman? Tenorman for me is getting a 7.5 out of 10. It's great, but it's not an essential piece for a jazz collection. So check this out if you're a hard bop fan and you like to see what was going on in the hard bop world on the West Coast in the mid 50s. Now, let's jump over to our next release. Very different release. Very distinct from Tenorman. This is Complusion! Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Hope I said that right. By Andrew Hill. It's got a pretty big lineup on here. So we've got Freddie Hubbard on trumpet and flugelhorn. You got John Gilmore on tenor sax and bass clarinet. You've got Andrew Hill on piano. You've got Cecil McBee on bass. Richard Davis makes an appearance on one track on bass. Joe Chambers on drums. I hope I'm saying this right. Neddy Kamar on African drums and African thumb piano. And Renaud Simmons on conga. Now, this is a record that requires multiple listens. Before making this video, I really had to sit with it and listen to it start to finish, maybe 3 or 4 times so I could really wrap my head around what's going on. So that's my introduction. Let's go ahead and jump into the presentation. So presentation, I think, is great on this record. I think it's very fitting, and I think it complements the music of this record very well. So you've got your classic Reed Miles cover design. You've got some cool typography emphasizing that this is Compulsion, with all the exclamation marks. It's an intense record, and it's an intense cover. I like the Andrew Hill featured in red here, so you can tell who the artist is. And this is a really cool, I don't know, kind of, what would you call it, a fly eye effect on Andrew Hill's face here. He's looking, very intensely at the camera. You've got the fence behind him. Just looks very, very serious, very intense, very artistic, which I think represents this record extremely well. You've got awesome session photos on the inside featuring a lot of the artists. And then you've got some killer liner notes on the back. I found these liner notes especially compelling. It dug into Andrew Hill's background on making this record, his thought process, what he wanted to share, the meaning behind each track, some really rich history, and information on the artistry of Andrew Hill. And there's some great quotes from him on there as well, which I really appreciate. Always love when the artist himself has a big impact on the liner notes. You can really tell what was going on there. So great liner notes on the back, written by Nat Hentoff, but featuring several quotes from Andrew Hill. Again, awesome liner notes here. Awesome cover, awesome session photos, and very fitting for the record itself. So I'm going to give this one, for presentation, 10 out of 10. All right, now let's dive into the music. The music on this one is hard to explain and describe, but I will say it is very well done, and it is a very unique listening experience. This is a record that you need to clear, 45, 50 minutes, sit on the couch, put it on, and just listen to it. This isn't something you want to play in the background. This isn't something that you maybe want to go take a jog to. Maybe you would, but I wouldn't. But upon listening, I think you're going to go on a oral journey of some really unique experiences and artistic depictions created by Andrew Hill. The record overall is Andrew Hill's reflections on the history of jazz, the African influence into modern day jazz, along with the African American experience at the time, and tying it all together. It's a very intense record, but a very worthwhile and interesting listen. If you've ever listened to traditional African music before, in a previous video, I mentioned how I found a record of field recordings from Nigerian processionals in the 60s. You can definitely feel the influence that polyrhythmic African style of drumming had on a record like this, which he does talk about on the back as well. There's also some really cool horn work. Every player on here is just absolutely playing, at a 10 out of 10. So there's great horn work. The drumming is out of this world, and then the conga on this is just insane. He's playing so fast. I can't even imagine keeping that tempo up for such a long time. So very, very talented musicianship on this record. Very talented compositions and unique and in-depth compositions from Andrew Hill. But again, it's not an easy listen, but it is a very rewarding listen. So it starts out with a track called Compulsion, and it very much is a fitting name. It rips you right into it. You've got intense drumming, intense percussion, the horns kind of coming in and out above it. But through that, it's not free jazz. Some, I think, on Discogs or other places, it's categorized as a free jazz record. I don't think that's a fair description. It's definitely avant-garde, but there's compositions within, and there's structure to this intensity. So it's just a unique listening experience because there's moments of melody and there's moments of rhythm that kind of come and go throughout. There's tension, there's release, and each track kind of fades into another. Compulsion starts out 10 out of 10, just rips you from where you are right into that record. And if you're not prepared for that moment, it could probably catch you off guard. But if not, if you're ready to sit down and be with music, it'll suck you in immediately. Then you've got all the artists featured on there just killing it. Then it transitions to the second track, Legacy, which drops off all the horns and is just the rhythm section and the piano. Slows down a little bit, but still a very, very compelling track. And then my personal favorite on the B side is Premonition. Slows down significantly. It's ominous, it's dark, the horns come back in, and it's got this really cool feel, takes you on a journey. I could see it kind of being in, a prominent place of like a movie of like a unique place, and it just kind of takes you somewhere else. That was my standout for me that really kind of took me on a journey. And then it ends with Limbo, kind of tying the themes of the records back in, giving everyone a chance to shine. Rhythm section, horns, everyone's back at it, tension release, and then the album comes to an end. Again, it's a challenging record, but it's really cool. And each time I listen to it, I take something new away. I appreciate it a bit more. So musically, I'm giving Compulsion by Andrew Hill a 10 out of 10. Nothing else like it. I've never listened to Andrew Hill before. Didn't know what to expect. Heard a lot of good things, and I can see why people like him so much. And I'll have to listen to his other work for sure. Very compelling record. So 10 out of 10 on music quality. As you can tell, I've already kind of spoken about the approachability of this one. Because it gets more rewarding on each listen, because there's composition there, because there's structure, because there's tension and release, it's not fully free jazz or chaos. I'm going to give this one a 3 out of 10 on approachability. Might be even being a bit generous on that. Definitely not for everybody. But if you're prepared to listen to this record, it can keep you coming back for multiple listens like it did me. And finally, value. Let's talk about the value of this record. So this record was actually reissued several times in the 60s and then again in the 70s. If you want an original pressing of this record from the 60s, I don't think I mentioned it before, this was recorded in 1965 but released in 1967. If you want one of those 1967 reissues, you're looking at paying on average about $150, but maybe upwards of $200 depending on the quality of the record. They did have some Rudy Van Gelder 1970s reissues that you can get for over $80. So there are pressings out there that are possible to get that you could save up, and in theory afford. But again, this record's only going to cost you less than $40. So it's still a great value because there are other pressings out there in the world you could get for less than $100. I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10 on value. So overall, I'm giving this record an 8.5 out of 10. Rounded up just a little bit because of the uniqueness of this record. I think this is an influential record in the jazz scene. I think Andrew Hill definitely changed the world of jazz with his unique composition style. Is it essential for every jazz collection? Not necessarily. If you're not into this type of music, don't buy it by all means. But if you really want to learn more about the history and the expansiveness and the depth of jazz, check this record out. Very unique, very cool, very impactful, and there's a lot of influences on this record. So definitely check this one out. I know there's been a lot of hype of this one online as well. People are super excited this one came out. Didn't know what to expect, but after several listens, I really enjoyed it. So that's my review of our Tone Poet releases from 2026. Compulsion by Andrew Hill and Tenorman by the Lawrence Marable Quartet. I am really looking forward to next month's releases. It has one of my favorite under the radar Blue Note releases of all time. I'm excited to open the package that just came in the mail yesterday and start spinning that one. So I'm really excited for next month's video to share that one with you guys. It's one of my all-time favorite Blue Notes. So keep an eye out for that one. It's going to be great. And then I might also post some videos about some new releases I've been finding at some record stores, found some cool things, got some great deals. So look for some other content coming out as well. If you like this type of content, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you have any thoughts you want to share, you want to disagree with me in the comments, or agree with me, feel free to leave a comment below as well. Thanks so much for watching the video, and as always,